So how can listeners start making some changes? They're interested in, adding more plant-based protein or maybe eating better quality protein without going full vegetarian or vegan or going full carnivore. What are some small changes that you recommend for the aging population?
Yeah, I usually always recommend that every single meal, think about what's your protein source and what's your fiber source, and then build your meals around there. Making sure that when you can, and sourcing your protein from sustainable sources the closer to home as possible. So if you do have access to, a local butcher or, different closer areas that you can source your proteins from, fresh farm eggs, that sort of thing, definitely do that. I mean, if you can't, then just try to make the best decisions that are available to you in your grocery store. But that should be, the first building block of the meal is what's my protein source, whether it's plant-based or it's animal-based. And then from there, what's my fiber source? So your fiber source can be anything from berries to leafy greens to chia seeds, flax seeds, whatever fiber source that you add in, just build your meal from there. Fill up on those two first. And then, if you have room for everything else, that's fine. But as long as we're just trying to not overcomplicate it, just have a good balance at every meal, we'll be able to better balance our blood lipid profiles, our blood sugar throughout the day. We'll be able to balance our hunger and our craving. We'll be able to reach our protein requirements a lot more. And that's the issue as well too. As we age, sometimes it's harder for us to really be able to eat larger meals at one time. So as long as we're getting our protein and our fiber in, we're going to be hitting a lot of those major building blocks that we need.
So I know kind of personalization is key when it comes to finding the right diet. How do you go about helping somebody find, where should I be on that spectrum from vegan to carnivore?
Yeah, definitely listen to your body, how your body feels after your meals. So you shouldn't feel run down, you shouldn't have bloating, you shouldn't have all these symptoms after every single meal. And doing a little bit of food journaling, so it might sound a little bit, monotonous at times to begin with, but just understanding how your body reacts to food. Especially when it comes to things like carbohydrates, I like to say that everyone has their own carbohydrate threshold, where amount of carbohydrates makes them feel good, and then the too much makes them feel tired, maybe sleepy. So it's really important to track the trends that work for you and then understand how your body is reacting to those foods. There's some individuals, when it comes to certain animal proteins, they just don't feel like they digest them well for whatever reason. It doesn't mean you have to have those foods in. There's going to be another alternative that you can also try in. So a lot of times it's just education about, okay, if this food's not sitting well with you, what's a better alternative for you? Try that one out. Okay, that's good. Then just trying to pick a menu throughout the day that's customizable to you and what your body's reacting. But I think the biggest thing is listen to how your body feels. A lot of people will follow a meal plan or a dietary protocol because someone told them to, but they're not thriving on it. They don't feel well on it. And so when it comes down to, okay, that protocol is not good for you, let's figure out one that is.
How important is it to maintain kind of the cultural history of the individual as well when we're looking at their diet?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, that we have a lot of emotional weight around their food choices and a lot of cultural influences on why we eat. Whether that is because we are, genetically we're in a geographical location, which means we need higher B vitamins or we need higher this. There's reasons why we eat the foods that we do. And a lot of the times we'll be able to thrive better if we stick to those cultural meals as well. However, there are ways to make those meals a little bit more health promoting. So me coming from a Hispanic family, there are ways to make traditional Mexican dishes really healthy for you. And I think a lot of the foundations of Mexican cuisines is very health promoting. But then, convenience comes in and all these other things come in where all of a sudden those health promoting foods are not so health promoting. So I like to joke, I'm like, we don't have to use tortillas as spoons. You know that, right? There's actually spoons that you can use. So I think it's really important to maintain those cultural foods. And a lot of those cultural foods are really high in, herbs and spices that come with a lot of really great health benefits. So I think it's really important to still stick to those, but just try to find, are there ways that we possibly can either go back to original recipes or just tweak them a little bit to better support your health.
So how easy was it, coming from a Hispanic background, to have made that shift to vegan when you did?
Oh, my family did not take it well at all. Oh, it was a whole thing. Yeah, especially my abuela. She was trying to sneak in meat into my meals when she would make them, or she would tell me it's not meat, it's just chicken, or But yeah, no, my family did not think that it was a good there were so many conversations and so many, heated conversations about how unhealthy it was for me. And, and also we speak with food as love as well too. So me not being able to eat the meals that, my grandmother makes or, relative makes, that's essentially rejecting their love as well. So they did not take it well, but I did my best. I tried to eat what I could, especially when I would go to Mexico. It was really hard to be able to still go out and enjoy those meals, only knowing that I could only have maybe a couple things here, but I got by.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand. When you're making these dramatic lifestyle shifts in your diet, that you have to weigh it against the cultural plausibility of doing that diet. I mean, for example, like ketogenic diets, the reality of being able to be truly keto is next to impossible. And most people say, well, I'm doing a keto diet, but then on Friday nights they go out and they drink alcohol or they have desserts and things like that. And then just, well, one day a week I go off the diet a little bit. Then you're not keto. You're just suffering through the week only to destroy it on the weekend. But if we look at it from, okay, well, what are small changes that I can make within my Hispanic culture to eat a little bit more healthy? Yeah, I can still eat some meat. Maybe I change the quality or the quantity of the meat that I'm eating. Legumes are a big part of the Hispanic diet. Just having variety in there. It's not that hard if we just approach it from a standpoint. Okay, I'm not going to offend my family. I'm not going to force these big changes on my family. What are the small changes I can make now to make my diet a little bit healthier and be able to go to family events and not be, ridiculed or disrupt the family or cause fights.
Yeah, and it's funny. I feel like I have definitely circled back down to the principles that my grandparents were telling me back when I first became vegan. They, as I mentioned, that they're both sides of my family were farmers, so they raised a lot of their own food. They gardened, they raised their own cattle, they butchered their own cattle, they ate very close to home and ate what they raised. And it's funny that now I'm kind of full circle right back to that. I'm like, oh, so the principles that they tried to teach me, those actually were really good. Won't tell them that, but yeah.
Yeah, culturally, the Hispanic diet is a very healthy diet when you stick to it in a non-Americanized way.
Exactly, yeah.
We tend to think of, Mexican food as being what you get at the Mexican restaurant, down the street, and that's not healthy Mexican food.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's see, what have we not talked about? We've talked about culture, preferences. Let's see, how well you're doing post-bachelor's degree and exercise. And I know the answer here, but I'm going to have you address it for our audience. What are you doing personally to age well?
Yeah, so exercise has been a huge component of my life. I grew up in sports. Every sport that I possibly could do, I was doing. I was a very active child. So physical movement has always been really ingrained to me. And when I first started in college, I really wanted to just go directly into dietetics and then end up finding the exercise physiology route and fell in love with that as well too. So throughout my academic career, I was always personal training on the side. And then I found CrossFit and really got indoctrinated into that whole world of CrossFit and really fell in love with it, fell in love with the community. And I just really enjoyed personal training and helping people gain their independence back and it didn't have to do ever with body composition, how people looked necessarily. It was just being able to show up in life, show up for their family, show up for their kids, and just be able to do. I remember one of my clients, her goal was she just wanted to be able to pick up her dog food bag and not. And then when she hit that marker, it was just like, life changing. But yeah, so exercise, I've seen it change individuals' life. And I just think movement is so therapeutic and it's such a huge component. And I weigh very heavily on that. I exercise pretty much every day. I'm at the point where it's like, if I'm going on vacation, I'm like, okay, how can I get some exercise in? How can I get some movement in? And I love all types of exercise. It brings me joy. It helps me get centered, and it just, improves my quality of life so much. And and I really enjoy sharing that with everyone else. So right now, what I do is I was doing mostly CrossFit, I would say, up until probably this last year. And I've transitioned a little bit more into just traditional bodybuilding and running, surprisingly, which I never thought I would go back to running. But I just kind of got to the point where, I love CrossFit, but my body was hurting a lot. So I was, constantly hammering myself into the ground. And I was like, this might be a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with exercise. So now I still do it every once in a while for community and for enjoyment and for fun, but I don't take it quite as seriously as I did in the past. And I'm more so focusing on making my body feel good, staying strong, and then making sure I can still run a 5K without feeling like I'm going to die.
So you're doing well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.